Some years ago, I ran out of zombie movies and TV series to watch, from big-budget American productions to low-budget European flicks, and even those strange yet beautiful Asian horror delicacies that somehow turned zombie genre into art films. I've seen it all. I tried to fill that void with video games. On the surface, that should have worked. But here's the problem. Most zombie games only scratch one part of the zombie supergenre each at a time. One gives you action, another tension. Some give you survival mechanics, another just offer chaotic fun. Meanwhile, movies and shows may have entire plots, seamlessly offering a holistic experience. You see people break, rebuild, mourn, lose, adapt, and build settlements. In games, it's another story. Games, on the other hand, tend to be heavily genre-driven, with zombies or survival mechanics acting like modifiers, layered on top of the core gameplay loop. They're usually not built to explore the full emotional or thematic range you'd find in visual media, with typical exceptions to the rule. They are more about systems and mechanics than about narrative tension or long-term consequences of many choices you'd usually have to make in this grim reality. Take Left 4 Dead, for example, one of the best zombie games ever made, hands down.
But 30 flights of goddamn stairs.
Come on, coach. Maybe the helicopter. Maybe it's made of chocolate.
But if you look at its core, then you cannot deny it's essentially a shooter game. It doesn't really deal with survival in the traditional sense that zombie fiction usually leans into. On the flip side, you have DayZ, which is a milsim shooter with heavy survival mechanics. Except the zombies feel more like they're an afterthought and a background noise rather than an actual main threat. Then there's Dying Light, which seems like it's trying to balance everything: story, parkour, combat, crafting, but at the end of the day, it's still a fairly linear experience. So as you can see, being a zombie nerd ain't a walk in the park, especially if you'd like to have a game that hits all the spots just right. But there's one game that actually pulls it all off. It's got shooting, looting, brutal yet fluid melee combat, scavenging, crafting, and even a community building layer that brings it all together. That game is State of Decay 2, and it might be just the closest thing to a true sandbox zombie survival story generator I've seen played out there, right next to Project Zomboid. When you dive into State of Decay 2, you could argue that it really has it all, but even so, there's something about it that can occasionally pull me out of the experience, which highlights the problem of finding a perfect zombie game that's made just for you. State of Decay and its sequel hits a rare middle ground for a zombie game. It doesn't try to reinvent the wheel, it just does a lot of things decently, all in one package. That balance makes it surprisingly strong canvas for telling your own story without sacrificing the fun. But even with all what State of Decay 2 gets right, there's still a lot of nuance and fragmentation of the potential fanbase. The game gives players a lot of tools, systems and directional choices, which means it can still divide those who try to get into it. It ticks all the right boxes on paper, but how you engage with it can wildly change how you feel about it. Personally, what I've always loved in zombie media, especially in movies, is the pure lethality of the scenario. The raw, underlying suspense hangs in every encounter with the common undead or infected. The idea that a bite or a scratch can be the end is intriguing. There is something beautifully simple and terrifying in this wicked vulnerability. It's not about power fantasy, it's about dread and consequence roleplay. That's why, the moment a movie introduces special infected, some tentacle monstrosities, tank zombies, or god forbid, the intelligent brain dead, I just check out.
He has memory and reasoning skills.
This is incredible. You've domesticated them. You've done it. Congratulations.
It breaks the illusion I craved for. I know it's all fiction, but I want it to feel grounded. That groundedness, paradoxically, is the line that makes the fantasy stick with me. So while State of Decay 2 nails many aspects of a proper zombie game, I still wish it leaned harder into that feeling of raw danger. I'd prefer for the basic zombies to have capacity to kill me with a bite or two, than to have ability to mow down hordes of undead, be half immune, and only feel threatened by the overflow of screeching feral zombies. Those, frankly, feel more annoying than challenging. Thankfully, a lot of those things that bother me about State of Decay 2 aren't hard rules. They can be addressed with a mod or 2, or 10. So, finally getting to the meat of this challenge, the goal is simple. Liberate Trumbull Valley from all plague hearts, with a single survivor, on lethal difficulty, with extremely, and I mean extremely deadly common zombies. To make things interesting, I'll be running a mod that increases zombie damage by threefold. That alone will make most of the fights with the common infected 1 or 2 hit encounters. To crank the tension even further, I'll be starting with a fresh character, modeled after my own interests. It's a significant difficulty improvement, because going lethal usually means having a character that's leveled up. This run will be completely solo. No community members, no recruiting NPCs. This means I probably won't have too many specialized base facilities, or the usual support network of other survivors who make the game more manageable. To offset this hell difficulty, I'll be using a mod disabling ferals, because they will be a death sentence if they spawn, given the damage multiplier I run. Editor Shino here. While putting together the scenario for the challenge, I thought this mod would be simply available for download. However, when I went to actually download the mod before the challenge, I found out that the mod has been set to hidden years ago. I even tried another mod that was supposed to disable both ferals and Juggernaut, since it was the only other option. Unfortunately, some game update seems to have broken it. It doesn't stop ferals or Juggernauts at all, and unknowingly the challenge will include all the special infected. So yeah, I guess the joke is on me. I'm also turning off fatigue accumulation, since I won't have a community to swap characters with. Realistically, I just go to sleep in a safe spot on a ladder or an outpost and wait things out. The in-game fatigue system doesn't make sense for a lone survivor. There are ways to counter it by using coffee or radio calls, but it's more of a chore than a meaningful system in a solo scenario. I'll also bump the trunk capacity, because the vanilla storage size feels like artificial difficulty, meant to stretch out gameplay by forcing tedious backtracking. It just won't convince me that a pickup truck designed to haul construction materials or drywall won't fit more than 9 rucksacks. To keep things functional, I'll give my character a higher labor count, just enough to unlock crafting and base building, without requiring a whole community to build anything, but with the caveat that I must be present at the base to build or craft anything, so that Casper the friendly ghost won't be in charge of crafting at the base while I'm off somewhere. I'll also allow myself to specialize in any skill after reaching the max level, thus bypassing the vague or RNG based trait system. That's because in real life we specialize deliberately in something we're after. We don't level cooking to become masters of chess, besides logical addition of having multiple facility mods, because why wouldn't you? Finally, one last modification, allowing the use of a small crossbow as a secondary weapon. Why? Because that's what I'd realistically carry in a zombie apocalypse, on a sling if I got my hands in such a thing. It's silent, reusable, and wouldn't weigh me down or limit my movements more than a heavy revolver. So, after twisting State of Decay 2 into the most realistic but brutally hardcore zombie survival sim I could imagine, complete with just a dash of balanced special infected, the question remains: can a lone survivor wipe the blood plague from hellish Trumbull Valley, or will he become another zombie roaming the barren countryside? Our protagonist is a fella aptly called Cold Killweather, codename Shino, a man whose name would sit right among the likes of John Matrix, Snake Plissken,
Call me Snake.
Gibson Rickenbacker, or Marion Cobra Cobretti.
The disease, and I'm the cure.
He played the guitar in a cover band, enjoyed a ton of 90s action movies, and liked exploring abandoned places. That's the closest I got to making a clone of myself in a game. He arrived in Trumbull Valley expecting a quiet start, but fate had other plans. A feral was already there, pacing around like a glitch in the Matrix. It wasn't supposed to spawn at all. It was a matter of time until the creature got his scent. Checking a nearby car turned up nothing, so he leaned on his urban explorer trait, a fancy way of saying he could run forever if he packed light. It was the right call. Fairfield was crawling with Undead, and fighting through it would have been S-word with extra steps for a starter character. The faster he went, the bigger his tail was. First kill later, it was time to make it to checkpoint Delta, where he could breathe easier. On the way, he found a gas can. A simple, beautiful miracle. In Trumbull Valley, gas wasn't just fuel, it was currency, comfort, and hope, all in a red can. A delicacy that decides between one being comfortable or being on its last legs. Colt heard the stories, survivors trying to take plague zombies head-on with melee weapons, like they were in some B-movie fever dream. He knew better. 1 or 2 scratches from those things, and you were halfway to joining the enemy team. Running away, he decided, would be the main combat strategy for the foreseeable future. And dignity be damned. The regular undead were less terrifying, but still nothing to underestimate. A single lapse in stealth could turn a calm venture into a journey to the far lands. Every footstep, every swing, every breath better be calculated. Because noise was the way of death in Trumbull Valley. On the way to the checkpoint, fortune showed a smile. He came across a few abandoned military tents. Dusty, ransacked, but not entirely stripped. Inside, he found a crossbow, a handful of bolts, and a few precious rounds of heavier ammo. It wasn't much, but in this world, that was like finding a cake in a cold meat storage. The timing of the crossbow couldn't have been better. Up ahead, a bridge was blocked by a screamer, the kind of enemy that turned one mistake into a call for dinner, while being the main dish. With the crossbow, silence became his ally. One bolt later, the creature dropped without much of a fuss, but a mistimed dodge and a panic button press nearly turned him into lunch. If that had been a plague zombie, that would be the end of it. Checkpoint Delta wasn't exactly a fortress, more like hastily put together rest stop, with aspiration of becoming a miniature military base. Its defenses were nearly non-existent, but for now, it would have to do. Even here, bloaters and screamers wandered too close for comfort. The only thing keeping them away was silence and good fortune. Shino could only hope that the earlier encounter with the feral had been a one-off. If another one showed up in a bad moment, it wouldn't matter whether he was level 1 or fully geared. After refueling the barely breathing car, Shino went back to finish looting the military tents, praying for anything that could tilt the odds. Lady Luck must have been in a generous mood that day. Among the crates, he found a heavy-duty ammo press, and, more importantly, a Scar H. It was a kind of find that made a man forget how doomed he actually was. It could have been the apocalypse's equivalent of divine intervention. If only he had a 50 cal or a grenade launcher to go with it. With the spoils secured and the car humming weakly beneath him, Shino set off towards his new home. Full of optimism, maybe even with a sliver of hope, but Trumbull Valley didn't even start its dance with him. What awaited him would make every nightmare he faced look like a pleasant dream with calming new age music. One of the most prized possessions in Trumbull Valley was light crossbow, the holy grail of survival gear. Lightweight, silent, with better chances of reclaiming bolts. It was the perfect balance between stealth and lethality. Sadly, for now, it was just a dream. Another fantasy item to have, sitting somewhere in the game's cruel loot tables. What he did have control over were his choices in the moment. The best one was to loot the area around Checkpoint Delta before venturing too far. Promised the best return for the least gas, though his car was already coughing like a 2-pack-a-day smoker. One bad turn and his lifeline on wheels would become a flaming metal coffin. His first stop was the mechanic shop, the kind of place that smelled like old spilled oil, dirty jumpsuits, and faint hope of a toolbox. Inside, he moved carefully. The sleeper zombies had a talent for playing dead. This time, luck tilted his way. A toolbox sat waiting for him. surrounded by a blessed cans of gasoline. Driving through Trumbull Valley's ever-winding roads always felt like a road trip circling hell. Gas here wasn't just a resource, it was survival in liquid form. After fixing the battered car, siphoning a bit more gas from a nearby tanker, and dealing with the bloater that decided to set up camp on the road, Colt set out to scout the immediate area. A quick stop at the warehouse painted a grim picture. Dealing with bloaters and screamers was going to be a recurring theme. They were little death traps, waiting for the smallest lapse in attention. Moving through Trumbull Valley was an exploration. It was a tightrope walk over a pit of ever-snapping teeth. The nearby tartan mart, sitting beside an old cell tower, was almost completely stripped bare. What was worse, the zombies seemed to respawn faster than logic could explain. The idea of safe zones was officially a dead concept. The only thing keeping him alive was the trusty crossbow from the military tents. Scouting the rest of the area proved uneventful. The land around the city, Checkpoint Delta, was dull. Largely, a scattering of empty camps, a military medical tent, and some electrical transformers humming in the distance. He got another heavy crossbow, which would have been a great find if it weren't exactly opposite of what he needed. After waiting for the wandering horde to pass and looting some houses, Colt finally cleared the side of the river. Everything except Fairfield, which was claimed by multiple overlapping plague hearts. It was time to see what the Heartland had to offer. Though options were slim, only 3 scouting spots remained in the plague-free zones, and venturing anywhere else was a gamble with no safety net. One wrong noise, one careless step, and a plague heart would awaken. Something Colt had absolutely no means to deal with. He spent the night back at the CD, patching together an infirmary and preparing the car for another run. When the first sunlight hit the valley, he hit the road. The first scouting site looked harmless enough. Just a few straggler zombies that went down quietly to stealth. But as always, lethal difficulty had a way of reminding him that fortune doesn't visit here often. Most of the places had already been looted clean, probably by the masses of evacuating people, leaving behind scraps and the faint smell of disappointment. A barn area nearby offered a glimmer of hope, as did a campsite, both rumored to hold that elusive light crossbow. Instead, he found yet another oversized one, in a slightly bigger backpack. A small upgrade, but not the miracle he was chasing. Back at the barn, another big crossbow. At this point, it was starting to feel personal. On the return trip, Killweather stopped by the military medical tent and struck gold. A vial of plague cure. It was like finding a winning lottery ticket, wedged in a dead man's pocket. The nearby camps, however, turned up nothing. Still no light crossbow, no miracle weapon. Looking at his map, he realized one of the last scouting points was a no-go. Buried deep in a mass of campgrounds, probably hosting a light crossbow. True, but connected to civilization by a single narrow road. Driving there would mean no space to turn, no escape route, and the risk of brushing past a screamer on a bad day was rather high. One scream from any of those bastards could wake up a plague heart, summon a siege and infestations, and turn the CD into a no-fun zone. After a quick pit stop at the base, Colt set out to clear out the electrical transformer site. A fast sweep of the area convinced him that the transformer site had more potential for survival than the CD. The tight fencing alone made it far more defensible than Checkpoint Delta. With a few well-placed cars serving as barricades, it could have been sealed up shut, probably until Juggernaut would come knocking. With that done, only one wide scouting spot remained. Killweather didn't expect much from it. Every inch of safe territory was shrinking fast, and going 50 yards too far in any direction meant stepping into plague territory, with red zombies galore. It was inevitable. Sooner or later, the valley would force him to cross that line. The final scouting location turned out to be a complete disappointment. A few story high billboard that revealed nothing new, no hidden buildings, no loot in sight, just the same grim landscape staring back. Shino knew what that meant. The time of safe runs was over. With white zones picked clean, the only thing left was to make uneasy peace with the idea of stepping into plague territory. Something he was nowhere near prepared for, either in gear or skill. The plan was simple in theory and insane in practice. Start with the outskirts, the areas where the plague's presence was lighter. Even then, the thought of fighting zombies that could take down the strongest human with 1 or 2 scratches wasn't exactly comforting. Before heading toward Jurassic Junction, he made sure to clear the few stragglers loitering near the scouting billboard. Getting stuck up there would be an embarrassing way to die. At first glance, the area seemed still, almost peaceful, but the quiet in Trumbull Valley was never a gift. It was usually a bait. Even out here, in what looked like the middle of nowhere, a plague heart pulsed nearby. Invisible, but very much alive, Shino crept toward an old military barricade, moving like a shadow, avoiding direct combat whenever possible. Slaughtering red zombies would cause damn plague hearts to stir. The areas repopulated quickly. Not a long walk there and back, and the red zombies were already circling the car, as if they got his scent and followed from afar. That single screamer by the road could make hell break loose if he was made. Everywhere he went, there was a plague heart idling nearby, a reminder that safety was a luxury long gone. Still, in the quieter red zones, Shino occasionally took calculated risks, circling around lone roamers before silently dropping them from behind. After a while, the car trunk was half filled with trade goods, enough to justify a trip to one of the traders in Fairfield. He needed influence, the strange currency of this apocalypse, and the only way to earn it now was through trade. One could argue that influence is an area-wide respect, bought through donating supplies to others. If you had enough respect, you could claim a place and have it untouched by others, or call in favors. It was weird, but that's how it worked. On the drive back to the CD, most buildings were already looted, gutted even. Every now and then, though, a house stood untouched, like a forgotten monument of history, to the time when all this was just a fantasy. The more he scavenged, the clearer it became that the middle of Trumbull Valley was running dry. Sooner or later, the only loot left would be buried deep in the infected towns, places no sane survivor would willingly go. The trip to the trader was going to be risky, but there was hope. A back road that looped around Fairfield, with the truck loaded to the brim with booze for barter. Colt set off, hoping any gods out there would spare him. The drive was nerve-wracking. Unseen screamers wailed from just a yard outside the plague territory, their echoes slicing through the silence like sirens of doom. One wrong bump, one unlucky sound, and the whole valley would come alive against him. It's because lethal zones didn't forgive mistakes. The trading outpost wasn't fully overrun, but too little too soon, he realized going there was a big mistake. Fighting near a plague heart was an S-word, so he let the NPCs handle the chaos, learning the plague hearts are indifferent to the zombie killing they do. A few quick trades later, it was time to leave, fast. The escape was pure chaos, with the car taking hits it couldn't afford. By the time he made it back to the open road, the car smoked as if it were to self-ignite into a steel fireball. Looking back, Killweather wasn't sure if the trip had been brave or just plain stupid. But in Trumbull Valley, the line between the two was always thin. The run to the trader might have left Shino questioning his motives, but at least it gave him enough influence to claim a foot outpost. A small win in a world that rarely offered any. Of course, even that wasn't easy. The noise from his car pulled in every nearby straggler like a dinner bell. Luckily, the top of a shipping container made for a good place to retreat, and so fought the corpse that resided on it. After quietly thinning the herd, he moved in to secure the site. One wrong step here could have been the end. In Trumbull Valley, Sometimes the zombies just appeared, like bad ideas after a little too much alcohol. Still, after some tense moments, the outpost was his. Unfortunately, a screamer boxed him in from the north, so he made the call to loot the last remaining white areas on the map before heading south, straight into the plague-infested zone below the CD. He treated plague zombies with all caution they deserved. Even in places that looked clear, it took only a few seconds for a supposed quiet moment to turn into a panicked sprint across several hundred yards. His car, beat up, dented, and somehow still running, doubled as his sanctuary often. His floating island of steel and plastic, surrounded by a sea of teeth. A short drive south revealed the grim truth. The CD was just a few hundred yards from a plague heart, entrenched in a cluster of warehouses and garages. The industrial loot was too good to ignore though. He spotted the heart in the corner of his vision, but before he could investigate the area further, a lone zombie smashed through a window, the kind of a noise that could turn a scouting trip into a skirmish. Trapped between a horde and a plague heart, he did what he always did best: survived despite the odds. Creeping deeper into the warehouse lot, Shino reached the loading bay. Jackpot, supplies everywhere. He dumped his first haul by the door and went back for more. It wasn't a true gold mine, but it was worth the risk. More importantly, the run maxed out his wits, granting him the ability to sneak like an actual ninja, instead of a man crouch walking with the grace of an elephant in wellies. Even the car seemed to purr in approval as he loaded it up. He had to make 2 trips under the growing pressure, slipping between the scattered zombies like a shadow. When they emerged from the warehouse he had cleared already twice, he trusted his new agility and slid past them, cutting through the hearts from the arch. Against all odds, he made it out. Still, he knew the quiet days were over. He had stretched the rural tiptoeing as far as it could go. Influence was drying up. His base was stagnating. Even the infirmary had to go. He was eating through his medicine reserves faster than he could replace them. The next step was unavoidable. He had to enter the towns. If he wanted progress, he'd have to risk everything for it. He couldn't expand without picking a fight with 1 or 2 plague hearts. With the powerhouse trait finally unlocked, he felt a spark of confidence. A dangerous and probably misplaced kind of courage. His fighting skills were still weak, the result of months spent avoiding direct combat like, well, the plague. But now it was the time. Cold Shino Killweather suited up with his best gear, put on the best hat he had, and looked down the road toward Spencer's Mill. The town was waiting, and it wasn't going to be a friendly rendezvous. Going on a scouting mission to the 3rd biggest town in the valley wasn't something he took lightly. The plan was simple: map most of Spencer's Mill, and with a bit of luck, hit the sheriff's office for high-caliber toys. This would allow him to use whatever he found to later bully a weak cluster of plague hearts into unlocking territory with a new HQ with outposts. This was dangerous and necessary at the same time. For safety, he left the truck at the vet's office on the outskirts. Good luck parking your apocalypse mobile in the middle of the town without waking every nearby plague heart, with all those screamers lurking behind every corner. Once the meds were looted, there was no more avoiding it. He had to go in. The best route was a ditch running along the road. Ugly, wet, and blessedly less crowded on than the main road. Fast sneaking with no stamina drain felt like cheating the universe. And the scouting point came into view without drama. From the tower, he saw a trailer park, Pterodactyl Ptark, in his head as the top candidate for a base 2. Compact, defensible, and surrounded with lootable buildings full of treasure. However, it was placed within a reach of a cluster of 3 plague hearts. The 2 down south would almost certainly trip together. The one up north at the gas station would likely set off by destroying the second. Still, the trailer park was prime real estate. If you liked your real estate with a side of existential risk, it was time to complete Objective 2, looting the sheriff's office. The sheriff's office should have been the good bit. Tactical breach, clearing, loot, and escape. Instead, inside waited a bloater, and offing him would announce his presence like a marching band on a parade. While he hesitated, a mass of zombies shuffled toward the building, and then the bloater detonated itself. This was terrible, as it would ring happy hours to any zombie in the area, including the pack of roaming undead. What was even worse, he spotted a juggernaut, who would obliterate him in one strike, given the damage multiplier. All that chaos meant the mission failed by coincidence. He tried to ghost around the juggernaut, giving it a wide berth like a polite pedestrian avoiding a riot, but it was seemingly indifferent to his sneaking abilities. It galloped after him with all the inevitability of a falling anvil. He only stopped once he reached his parked truck, to the very last moments unsure if the car would be his salvation or tomb. Without looking back, he drove fast for the CD, somewhat defeated. Humbled, but not dead. He rerouted his mind south, toward Marshall. New objective, reconnaissance for heavy hardware. Back on the road again, half a mile down, and the Riverside Water Tower appeared behind the bend. A perfect vantage to see what misery was ahead. From up top, Shino spotted two plague hearts choking the west side of Marshall. Worse yet, a group of survivors had holed up in the gun store. Great for them, terrible for his looting plans. That spot was officially off limits. Time to sliver into the old town instead. He chose to cross through the river, banking on fewer zombies near the water than on the bridge or main streets. For once, he was right. Moving house to house, he brushed dangerously close to a few hordes, but his stealth was adamant. The backyard walls along the river made for perfect cover, and before long, he was at the bridge leading into the old town. Unfortunately, one of the plague hearts had set up shop right next to the scouting point. The tower had to be climbed anyway. The mission mattered more than the odds. From the top, the picture was bleak. Marshall was a lost cause for now, completely infested. Reclaiming it would mean destroying hearts in rapid succession, 7 of them by his count. And that was a fantasy for another day. Still, his eyes lingered on the army camp along the main street. If there was anywhere to find heavy gear, that was it. Time to thread through buildings and hope luck would finally pick a side. It didn't. One zombie's random bad turnaround caused him to break stealth and bolt. The noise pulled more than he could count, and in the chaos, he unknowingly ran straight towards a Pharaoh's territory. To make things worse, a juggernaut spawned nearby, cutting off his escape to the west. Shino sprinted for the river, down near the bridge in a desperate attempt to break the line of sight. Miraculously, it worked, barely. Breath ragged, he vaulted a few fences and stumbled into the old Alamo restaurant, right across from yet another plague heart. And that's when he found it. A small cache of military crates hidden behind a barricade. A moment of truth. But when he cracked them open, fortune laughed in his face. Some spare parts and a single lonely pipe bomb. That was nearly all of it. As the uneasy groans of nearby zombies thickened in the air, he knew the moment of grace was over. The area was stirring, as he was in one of the worst death traps in all of Trumbull Valley. Time to move, or die loitering. The undead began emerging from nearby buildings, as if drawn by the scent of sweat and panic. Shino pushed through and finally reached the military camp, only to find it a cruel joke. What once might have been an army outpost now was just a handful of civilian tents and empty supply crates. Not a single weapon, not even a scrap of rations. The whole mission had been doomed from the start, seems. A hollow expedition dressed as hope. The grand total, 10 bullets for a gun he didn't have, and 3 explosives that were barely a thing of notice. Defeated, he headed toward his car. The only strategy now was speed. No reason to sneak when his pack weighed less than he expected. Old habits kicked in, and a flicker of curiosity made him scale another vantage point on the way back. It revealed nothing new, but the silence that followed did. He wasn't alone. A feral was tailing him. The thing moved like a monkey dog, fast, erratic, almost intelligent. It sniffed the air, pacing too darn close to his liking. When it vaulted a fence facing the other way, he knew it was his chance. He bolted, no hesitation, no looking back. He ignored the scattered undead on his right. They couldn't catch him now, but the fate wasn't done playing dice. A horde materialized straight ahead, blocking the narrow bridge that led out of town. Beneath it, a screamer lurked. There was no time to think. He sprinted through, lungs burning, vision tunneling, until his car roared back to life. Only when Marshall was a shrinking blur in the rearview mirror, he allowed himself to recompose. The mission was another failure by every metric, but he was still alive, and in Trumbull Valley, that was the only kind of victory that mattered. After 2 failed runs back to back, Shino knew this was the last roll of the dice. Spencer's mill had to be taken. The plan was crude but clear. Get to the Tartan Mart rooftop and pray it offered a clean firing line on the play cards. Maybe luck would finally throw him a bone. His inventory painted an uneasy picture. Gas was running low. 30 rounds for the Scar H, 30 heavy bolts for the crossbow, a handful of grenades, some homemade, some that looked like they shouldn't be trusted. Colt was unsure if it was enough for a full siege, but it was enough to make a point. He packed it all with a feeling of dread. In his bones, he felt it. This was the one that would either end in triumph or death. He took the road through the old farmstead, a wide open stretch that allowed some room to dodge and weave. The plan was starting to appear bolder the closer he got. He drove straight into town, knowing stealth was no longer an option. Every engine rev was a challenge issued to the dead. The only goal now was to lure them away from the ladder leading to the rooftop in the back. Timing became everything. He slammed the brakes. Shino leapt for the ladder, grabbing the handle a heartbeat before Death Angel could grab him. The game broke the rules, again. Yet another feral spawned, breaking the unspoken promise of balance. It circled the mart below him like a crazed dog, looping in endless frustration, and the screamer joined in below. Every howl and roar drew more zombies, in a feedback loop from hell. Still, there was a silver lining. From the rooftop, Shino had exactly what he'd gambled for, a clear line of sight to the play card. The town seethed beneath him. The world narrowed down to one burning target. It wasn't much, but it was enough. But still, the feral had to be dealt with. It lingered below like a rabid animal that had never run out of juice. It wouldn't wander off, no matter how long he waited. So Colt crouched by the ladder, crossbow ready, eyes locked on the creature's erratic movements. It darted back and forth on all fours, jittering as if powered by primal instincts and hatred. He took the shot, missed. The feral spun around and charged the ladder, like it knew where he was. But this time, Shino was ready. Another bolt flew, and the beast dropped. Colt descended the ladder fast. One more shot, and the world had one less screamer. He grabbed a couple of grenades from the trunk. It was time to light up the play card. The place was already crawling with the dead, but this would only make it worse. He vaulted over the scrappy fence, and the world roared awake. From every window, door, and alley, the congregation of Decay poured to defend their pulsing god. There was no time to plan. He flanked left, only to find the undead constantly slipping in and out through the shattered window like a nightmarish revolving door. He hurled 2 grenades at odd angles, both missing the mark spectacularly. Another attempt, another flood of shrieking bodies. The next grenade hit something. Unfortunately, that something was a zombie, which detonated in a wet explosion of limbs and rot. The situation had gone from bad to who designed this level in seconds. One reckless leap of a container and a desperate dash towards the ladder bought him a few precious seconds. He climbed, hard hammering, and waited. But the horde refused to lose interest. Descending to grab supplies was a gamble, and a glass-shattering scream foiled his move. A stray swipe carved onto him, one light scratch, and a third of his health was gone. Trapped on the rooftop, surrounded, he did the only thing left to do. Line up the crossbow and start sending bolts into the heart. But even that turned absurd, as the zombies kept walking through his line of fire and taking a bolt for their boss. When the horde finally spread out, he switched to the Scar Age. 30 rounds thundered into the pulsing mass. The heart writhed, screamed, and so did his ammo count. Both were nearly finished, hopefully. With no bullets left, he turned back to the crossbow. It barely scratched the thing, mostly because the undead traffic jam in the windows kept intercepting the shots. After countless roof retreats, one lucky dropkick, and a few pipe bombs left to his name, he made a break for it. Vaulted a fence, found an opening, and hurled in the explosive. The heart convulsed and died. Victory, at least on paper, because, naturally, the explosion awakened another heart.
Start claiming nearby places for ourselves.
After a rest from digital despair and a log back in, he returned to claim his spoils. What he didn't know was that the game decided to respawn the window through which he previously shot a mag of Scar Age and countless bolts, and with it, the glass shattered. In the house, the game spawned everything that hated him. A bloater exploded near point blank. He went down. Then again. And finally, a blood feral came running and finished the job. I didn't beat the challenge. Trumbull Valley was still infested, the plague hearts still beat in the shadows, and my lone survivor became another ghost in the valley, or maybe a limbless undead. I had made progress by being successfully cautious and taking out the first plague heart, feeling competent. But the apocalypse has a cruel sense of humor. Just as I went to collect my hard-earned spoils from the first heart on the following sunny day, and ambushed by bloater, quickly followed by a feral, despite my efforts to disable them with mods, sealed my fate. It was a swift, brutal end, a stark reminder that even with all my preparations and grind, survival is never guaranteed. In the end, I think that even with ferals and triple damage, retaking Trumbull Valley is doable. With those settings, it's an entirely different game, from where you usually can hack hundreds of zombies, knowing you can tank scratches or a bite or few, and level fighting with little consequence. With this grim lesson, first and foremost, I would adjust my gameplay to never trust the serenity of the scene, but also to go boldly into the red zones before tackling the first heart. But somewhere between sneaking past the horde, scavenging with an overstuffed trunk, and running from zombies, I found what I was really looking for. State of Decay was never about winning, not really. It's a game about managing the impossible, about holding the line and walking on it with whatever you've got, even when you know the odds aren't in your favor. It's not about having a home in hell, but making one in the cracks between moments of utter chaos. And in all this, State of Decay 2 turns out to be a paradoxically cozy but unforgiving game. Maybe that's the appeal of zombie genre to begin with. The hope that, even at your lowest, even when the world collapses around you, there's still something left to fight for. Some higher calling or a mission. Or maybe there's some part of you that pushes forward, not to win, but just to live one more day. To watch the sun go down and trees bristle in the quiet. Because I learned this wasn't about conquering the map. It was more about stepping into the shoes of someone who doesn't get to reload a save. Someone without comfort, without certainty, without a safety net. And in doing that, I realized just how much the idea of home and community matters. Not the walls or the beds, but the sense of belonging. The safety of knowing you're not alone. And maybe, if there were a few guys with me, then we would have taken back Trumbull Valley in style. That place still beckons me, and perhaps one day I will return there, to reclaim it, under even worse circumstances and conditions. Who knows, only time will tell. But for now, thank you for listening.